Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
Welcome to Drilled, the There Will Be Fraud series. In short, weekly episodes, we're going to be covering the ongoing ways that the fossil fuel industry is using the COVID-19 pandemic to push all sorts of deregulation, secure funding for itself, and get up to various other things. Today, I am joined by Justin Mikulka. He is a reporter for DSMOG, and he's been looking at the financial straits of the fossil fuel industry, and particularly shale gas companies, for the last couple of years. Way before anybody else, Justin was pointing out that, hey, these companies have never made a profit. Seems weird. Last week, Justin published a story about how the biggest obstacles to a bailout for shale gas companies right now might surprise you. It's Exxon and Chevron, joined by the American Petroleum Institute. We get into why that is in this episode. Here's my conversation with Justin. Hey, Drilled listeners, Amy here to recommend another climate podcast. If you have ever wondered exactly where your water comes from, what it means to actually break up with fossil fuels, or what the year 2100 could even look like, check out the Climate Dispatch from the folks at the Sierra Club Angeles chapter in collaboration with Stranded Astronaut Productions. The show is brand new. It launched in April, just in time for Earth Day, and it answers all those questions and more. The Climate Dispatch explores both global and local stories of the climate crisis through the lens of Southern California. On the show, host Taya Jeanette brings together a variety of guests and experts in conversation to share their climate wins and break down their fears and collective hopes for the future. Some featured guests include Time 100 Next recipient and climate activist Naleli Kobo, Troy Stevens, creative manager of Grist Magazine's Imagine 2200 Climate Fiction Contest, Aru Shaini Ajay, executive director of the Sunrise Movement, and Allison Chin, president of the Sierra Club Board of Directors. Each episode will also feature a local LA-based band or musician to play out the show. Check out the Climate Dispatch at sc.org/climate dispatch or wherever you listen to podcasts.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks, or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Visit USAA.com/bundle.
Bundle savings are off total premium, not available in all states or in all situations. To qualify, auto policy must be active prior to property policy issue, subject to change. Restrictions apply. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
Maybe I could have you start by talking a little bit about why it might be that the larger oil companies don't want a bailout for the sort of smaller independent shale companies.
There's currently the international price war going on, between the Saudis and Russia. And, obviously that's driving the price of oil down, which is hurting the U.S. industry. What's hurting the most is the shale companies because they've failed to make money for the past decade. And have a lot of debts that they need to pay back. And so, but the situation we're in right now is the two majors, Chevron and Exxon, who are already into the shale business in a big way in the Permian region, which is really the last shale play that anyone wants to be in because it's the only one that really still is profitable in any way. So if you step back from the global price war going on, there's a war going on in the Permian region where Exxon and Chevron are happy to see no bailouts for the shale companies because that will make them go bankrupt more quickly.
Right.
And then Chevron and Exxon more so, because Chevron is in a much stronger position. Exxon has overpaid for a lot of assets in the past, and so they're looking at this as a real opportunity to hopefully bankrupt, watch the shale companies go bankrupt and then buy those Permian assets for pennies on the dollar.
Where does that leave Oxy in the Permian?
Well, speaking of shale gas, one of the reasons Exxon wants to pick up assets cheap is because they made one of the worst acquisitions ever in 2009 when they bought XTO, which was their way to get into the shale market, mostly gas at that point. They paid $41 billion for it, and it probably was worth $1 billion a couple years later. So, But right now, Oxy is looking to take the place in the history books as the worst, worse than the XTO acquisition by Exxon. Similar price tag of $38 billion. That's what they paid for Anadarko. And it's just turned out to be a disaster. But an important part of that story is Chevron had an offer of $33 billion for Anadarko. And then Occidental came in and Anadarko wanted to get a bidding war going, and Chevron just backed out and said, we're not overpaying, 33 is our highest offer. And so 38 was the offer that came through from Occidental. So, you can see in hindsight, Chevron made a very smart move. Plus they got, because they were already in negotiations, they got $1 billion payout just for walking away.
Wow.
Which they used to buy back stock. So Chevron has paid very little for their assets in the Permian. They seem to not be desperate in any way, whereas Occidental certainly overpaid for those assets. And it looks like even Warren Buffett, who put in $10 billion into that deal, and his explanation for it was he believed in the Permian as a viable, oil producing field where you could make profits. And here we are a year later, and it's looking like even Warren Buffett's going to lose money on this deal. So the Permian is really where money goes to die at this point.
Can you talk a little bit about why the Anadarko purchase was a bad one, and what made it seem like it was worth that much money initially, and why has it turned out to be a bad purchase?
With all of these shale plays, wells and certain regions have been profitable, but on the whole, the industry and these shale plays on the whole, most of the wells are not profitable. So the idea of overpaying for an asset when you probably you're not going to make money, even if you paid fair market value, Occidental certainly overpaid for it. They paid $5 billion more than Chevron was willing to pay. The companies make these mistakes where they think scale is going to help, and they wanted to acquire more assets and become a major player in the game. And they've wiped out, a year ago, Occidental stock was around $67, and now it's around 10. And so they've saddled themselves with all this debt, which is the classic model for a shale company. You borrow money to get these wells, but you have to keep getting more wells because they deplete so quickly. So at a time when the industry already, it was clear. I started writing about how the industry wasn't making money 2 years ago. And it was pretty clear a year ago that there were serious structural problems in the finances of the shale industry. And then they went in and it's the classic buying at the top of a market. They overpaid, and now they're just getting, so much equity has been wiped out. And then that was even before, the oil prices right now are, if you look at, the stock ticker, it says oil prices are $20 a share. But in Texas, in the Permian, they're probably getting $10 a barrel. In the Bakken, in some places, it's between 5 and 10. There's just, it's going to be just a downward spiral for all these companies. Which is exactly what Exxon and Chevron are enjoying watching and waiting for, so that they can then buy up the assets.
Why are companies continuing to invest in this, given that it is a collapsing industry?
Yeah, well, what Buffett did, apparently the CEO of Occidental had a 90-minute conversation with him and convinced him to put the $10 billion into the deal for the acquisition for Anadarko.
Wow.
probably he should have done a little bit more homework. You would have expected from Buffett. But
Yeah.
what he did do, it's the same thing he did during the housing crisis. Goldman Sachs was insolvent, and Warren Buffett came in and gave them $10 billion. But what he does, the way these are structured is if the company makes any money, he's first in line. He has preferred status.
Right.
And so it's a pretty safe bet unless Occidental goes bankrupt, which there's, I think, a real chance of now. What's happening right now is they're looking, instead of paying him back with money in dividends, because they don't have any anymore, they're looking at paying him back a stock, which is all well and good. If they survive and the oil price goes back up, then he does very well.
Right.
If they go bankrupt, he's in trouble just like everyone else.
Okay, so say Oxy goes out of business, a bunch of these small shale companies go out of business, Exxon and Chevron pick up cheap property in the Permian, but the price war continues for like another year or who knows how long. Like I think ultimately, like, the Saudis and the Russians can withstand a low oil price for longer than any US company. So is there a point where, like, even Exxon and Chevron would be in trouble with those assets?
Well, and that's the thing. I'm actually writing an article about that right now. Exxon, there's this mythology that, well, once Exxon comes in, they know how to make money on these properties and make money in the shale business. But all you have to do is look at the XTO deal to show that they're not the best judge of investing in shale. But Goldman Sachs just came out with basically a research note on the shale industry this week. And one of the things that they noted was Exxon and Chevron have no ability to produce oil more cheaply than any of these other companies.
Right.
So, which really makes sense. I mean, companies like Pioneer have been doing this for a long time. They hire the best people and they understand shale very well. So it's not like Exxon can come in and just has some magic formula to be able to make money when oil is $30 a barrel.
Right.
So I expect Exxon to continue losing money on shale, but if you look at their corporate strategy, basically what they're saying is we're going to acquire as much oil as we can and we're going to produce it. And we plan to burn every last drop for the next, 3 to 5 decades. Right. And so this is there is oil in the Permian, in that shale. It's just no one has figured out a way how to get it out of the ground profitably on a large scale. And the other thing that everyone is facing in the Permian, and the Bakken has already peaked, essentially. They've drilled all the best spots. So, it's not like Exxon can go in and say, we're just going to, we're going to pick up the best spots. Most of the sweet spots have already been drilled. So I don't foresee a future, especially if oil prices remain low, where Exxon magically figures out how to make a profit in the Permian, even at $50 a barrel, because no one has consistently shown they can do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, Exxon right now has been borrowing money to pay its dividend, which is just not a sustainable business model. And so this crisis is going to certainly be used, one, as ways, as you've talked about, they're going to get bailouts in some way, whether it's from the Fed or from these big slush funds. And certainly at one point, Trump tweeted out about the oil industry, and he specifically used the phrase national security.
Right.
And so, they're certainly going to try to do those things. But again, Exxon and Chevron do not want those shale companies bailed out. And there's right now, just this week, the CEO of Scott Sheffield of Pioneer and then the CEO of Parsley have written a letter to the Texas regulatory agency asking for production cuts, basically saying you need to step in and tell the Texas producers we need to limit production so we can bring prices back up. And so, that's unprecedented to ask for, control of the markets, the free markets in America. But in the reporting on that, just the 2 sentences that matter, or the one sentence was, Chevron and Exxon do not support production cuts. So once again, the shale companies are trying whatever they can do to stay alive. And at every turn, Chevron and Exxon and the American Petroleum Institute are stepping in the way, and they just have more power.
That's it for this time. Again, we're going to be doing ongoing reporting to track exactly what the fossil fuel industry is getting up to while the world is distracted by a pandemic. The season is a total surprise and completely unbudgeted for. So if you would like to support our reporting, we could really use that support right now. Our Patreon is patreon.com/drilled. You get all sorts of things for signing up, including ad-free episodes, access to early content, bonus episodes, and more. I'd like to give a shout out to our first patrons. We have just under 50, so this is going to be quite a list, and I'm sorry I meant to start doing these earlier, but time got away from me. So big thanks to Caitlin Caldwell, Chris Howell, Claire Curtis, Curtis King, DL, Daniel Woldorf, David Michaels, David Weisskopf, Donald Shaw, Eflin Mercier, Emily Grubert, Emma Kelly, Ian McDowell, Irina Ivanova, Jamie Foltz, Jeff Spakowski, Jess, Joseph Jakuda, Catherine Wilkinson, Keith Anderson, Leah Stokes, Mary Stanley, Matthew Erickson, Michael Koo, Mike Bell, Miranda Massey, Nick Offerman, Nora Lehman, Patrick, and I'm sorry for the folks that just have one name here. They didn't include their last names in their sign up, so I'm sorry for not giving you a bigger shout out. Send me your last name if you want me to acknowledge you properly. Paul Johnston, Rachel Budaberg, Ramona Liberoff, Rich Bunnell, Rick Smith, Russell Chisholm, Ryan Beam, Sage Welch, Sam Larson, Sarah Ventry, Sean Dogway, Stephen Parati, Sudhanshu Jain, Susie Hairston, Tatiana Lugin, Timothy Ross, Zachary Franklin, and Zachary Kramer. You guys are awesome. Seriously, I can't even begin to thank you. It's very, very kind to see people willing to support us without us really even asking that much. So I appreciate it. We are going to be in closer contact with you in the coming weeks and sending you all kinds of stuff to make your membership worthwhile. But we do very much appreciate your support of our work. If you want to join them and get your name in the credits, again, that is patreon.com/drilled. We'll put a link in the show notes too. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.